So, dear friends, I'm doing this little video as my teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, encouraged us to do, is to share, deep insights and wisdom from our own experiences, and to our own cultures in our own words, that maybe resonates, so that's why I'm doing this video, and hoping that if it just helps anyone to not have the level of difficulties and suffering that I've caused myself and others in life, then it was worth doing this little video. So my journey started, and I won't go into a huge amount of detail. If you wanted to check my story out a little bit more, there's some stuff on the internet. But I was we live in a world, as we know, full of separation and real attachment to our own selves, and there's a real clear pathway to that, particularly in our Western culture and society, which has led to a great deal of suffering in the world, as we can see, both collectively and individually, and this is just my experience and path of that kind of separation, and then the realizing that that everything is connected. So going from a place of quite deep suffering and unhappiness, by following the path that the environment and the messaging that I was getting from my environment growing up led to, really, that with my start in life, and as we all experience this huge separation, the moment we're born and the umbilical cord is cut, and we're alone in the world, and with deep wisdom, this is termed kind of like the original fear of this quite violent separation and coming into the world, and our senses being completely assaulted, and and then we have this incredibly beautiful attachment to our parents, our mother and our father, and if we're loved deeply, with understanding and kindness and compassion and some joy and some happiness and some inclusivity and equanimity, then we can grow up into really rounded, beautiful beings, which is a lot of people on this planet. But my journey wasn't like that. I had a lot of early separation in my life. Like I say, you can check this out. There's a couple of articles, for example, and interviews that have been recorded about my early life and suffering. So I don't need to go deeply into that at this moment. But it's I was separated from my mum and my dad at an early age, which caused a lot of difficulty. I was brought up by my my grandparents, and my grandmother had a lot of difficulty as well, and she didn't really know how to show love because of how she'd been brought up and taught how to parent in the West, and so this led to for me, and I see this a lot in particularly in business and with many leaders, that this childhood trauma that we suffer can lead to entrepreneurial an entrepreneurial response from trauma, or a high achievement response to trauma, so I grew up not feeling loved, really truly loved, not understood. I felt separated. I felt not good enough. Why would my mother leave me, and for example take my little brother with her, but leave me with my grandparents? So I grew up with not feeling good enough, a feeling of inferiority, which kind of became a complex. And that drove behaviours to wanting to always be good enough, and wanting to be accepted, and wanting to be loved and understood. Our society is perfectly set up for this, because as a young child, to protect me from the pain and difficulties and suffering that I was encountering as a child, our mind is so powerful to step in to protect us, and to desensitize from the pain and the hurt, we could go through life. I went through life being on high alert, and always alert to danger, and the coping mechanisms and coping strategies and the habit energies that I could quite see clearly from my ancestors as well, and since I've looked more deeply into my ancestral life and path, I can see that I was following habitual patterns, but this was heightened by the difficulties I had as a child. So I wanted to try and be in control of pretty much everything in my life, with this. So and I repeated the patterns as well, and in Eastern philosophy and views, it's that we hold a lot of sadness and trauma and grief in our lungs. And at the age of 10 years of age, I contracted bronchial pneumonia, and I had a near-death experience with that, and my whole family were called into the hospital because I wasn't going to make it through the night. And I had the whole out-of-body experience and saw myself in the oxygen tent with my family around. So this also had a profound effect on me, and this is for another video to explain that near-death experience. But I touched into this complete interconnectedness of the whole cosmic field, if you like, that we are not this separate self. So I grew up never, from that moment really, and my ancestral because the way we're built is through our ancestral, our DNA, what we're taking to our senses throughout our whole life, and the environments that we're in. These are the three concrete areas that make us who we are right here, right now. And to become more and more aware of that, with this deep mindfulness and meditation practice that that I've discovered is and experienced is the nature of who we are on this planet. So it helps with this dualism that we have, particularly in the West. So if we're constantly thinking and measuring, and that's what we believe is reality, then it's a very narrow view, a very contracted view of the world. And this is why we have so much, why I had so much difficulty, because I wasn't afraid of death, per se, because I'd experienced this profound knowing, this deep insight, and yet I was afraid of how to get through life, how I was going to survive. And I was brought up in a very simple upbringing with a lot of scarcity. My grandfather not long retired after they took me on, and his pension failed, and we didn't have a lot of money at all. So that's what I kind of grew up with. So again, the messaging I was getting was that money was so important, and success was so important from that materialistic thinking and measuring matrix. So I was getting very mixed messaging from what was coming from within, to what was coming from external influences. And in the West, we experience, particularly growing up in the 1970s, for me, a lot of the sensory inputs that I was getting, particularly from TV, and the messaging of how to be a man in this world, was very destructive, very masculine, power over, seeing strength as covering up emotions and feelings, and being the strong, almost even in some respects, the strong silent type who can deal with anything. Growing up with a lot of war movies, because it wasn't that long since the Second World War, and seeing heroes as being these strong masculine characters, and then a lot of cowboy type movies of with John Wayne and those kind of characters, and a real now we know a real wrong view of this this dualism, this good and evil, the cowboys seen as good, and the Indians being kind of like savages. And now we know just the wisdom that these indigenous species have and had. And so this ancient wisdom is knitted through all of our species. and yet it is this worldview that is destroying us as a species, of this separation, of led by the thinking mind and the measuring. So the measuring of how strong you are, for example, as a boy, as a man. So I encountered a lot of bullying at school, because I'd been sick. I pretty much had almost like a year off school with my bronchial pneumonia. When I went back, I think I'd lost probably about half my body weight. And I moved to a new school, so I was the only, I didn't know anybody. I got bullied, and again, the messaging that I was getting was that you had to be strong, you had to be influential, you had to be popular, you had to have, have lots of friends, kind of thing, and and then money was what money could buy you, all the latest kind of gadgets, like the the Walkman in my days, and you saw people, kids being dropped off in nice cars, and that was a measure of success. Their family was successful, and constantly thinking and measuring. So this was the environment that I was brought up in. And I was craving this love. So almost my first, my first girlfriend, we got pregnant. So I was a young father, which created a huge amount of suffering. I'd always had this kind of entrepreneurial streak in me, that wanted to be successful, wanted to have control over my life, wanted to have money so I could do things. I could buy nice cars, I could buy nice things, and to be popular, to feel good enough, to be able to do the things that I wanted to do, travel the world. We had other influences like the James Bond movies, where you saw, these cool, suave guys that traveled around the world, drove, exotic places, drove incredibly beautiful Aston Martins and things like this, cars like this, and had beautiful women, and it's again these messages. So I wanted a beautiful girlfriend. I wanted money, so that I could do the things that I wanted and buy the things that I wanted. I wanted a nice car because I didn't feel good enough, because of this inferiority complex. I wanted a nice, place. I wanted to travel to exotic places, and I wanted to be successful. So I was always craving of how to be a millionaire. How, that was it. That, there was no real strategy. And me and one of my, my best friends, my oldest friends, we used to strategize how we were going to make money from nothing, because we both had nothing. So we even started little car wash businesses, and we'd wash cars. I even started a little business called Diapers Direct, where I used to see mothers struggling home with big packets of diapers or nappies, and I thought, if we could deliver those and make a margin on that, and I believe now that is quite a successful actual business in itself. But we got pregnant. Me and my girlfriend got pregnant, and we went into social housing, a council estate, and it was a pretty rough place in Leicestershire, in Leicester. A pretty rough place, and it was a big shock to me at the age of 20 to, in fact, the night that my daughter was born, I was nailing squares of carpet on the stairs. And it was very, very difficult for us. And we couldn't be, we couldn't be together because of the whole social security system as well. So it was incredibly difficult time. And I went through times of, not even having enough money to buy food and kind of living on jacket potatoes and beans for days on end. And it was really tough. It was really tough. But I still had this entrepreneurial spirit, but I had to work, I had to get a job, I had to leave education and my academia and follow, just earn money to actually, pay for things and just the essentials. And coupled with the fact that me and my girlfriend probably wouldn't have been together if it hadn't have been for my daughter coming along. We were, falling in and out as well, and incredible stresses and strains. So I know what it is to have very, very little, and still knowing that I'm very blessed to be brought up in the West, that I have a social security system to fall back on, and it's broken, as we know, because it's not. Again, it's another system that's not given from a place of love and kindness and compassion and inclusivity. So again, I felt very alienated, not good enough, not taken care of, and there was no one really there for us, really. So we were the nuclear family, a little nuclear family, and I worked really hard in a cooperative, because I kind of always had these kind of social values, and yet the environment that I became in, even in a cooperative, I thought, one of the areas I was looking at that I could earn some money to support the family and get us out of the place that we were in into a nice place was, how can I earn money really quickly? So I joined this cooperative that was doing some good work in the financial arena of trying to take care of people that weren't so fortunate. So this was where I started to learn about insurance and assurance and investment as well, so that we could help make people's lives a little bit better. It was a good model that I kind of believed in. And yet I saw this over a few years get purpose jacked, taken over by people that were really just interested in themselves, and they really weren't interested in the cooperative ethos. They just wanted to make money for themselves, and that's why that eventually that business failed, because of this greed and individuals wanting to make money. So this constant wanting of power, some kind of fame, money, and other unwholesome areas like sexual craving that comes from money and power and being in the wrong environments. And I was in this environment of money all of a sudden, where I've advised thousands of clients over the years and on their finances, right from people in the working class right up to multi-millionaires. So a wide spectrum. But one thing I realized is that a lot of this is driven by fear, this original fear and desire. So this desire to be good enough, and to be loved and understood, and this fear of losing this notion of the separate self because we get so attached to it. And so I was in it, and I left this cooperative, and then came into the capitalist, the real capitalist world of money, that was driven by this fear and desire. And the way I saw this playing out was that money was the answer to a lot of people's problems, or that's what they thought, and that's what I thought. So to accumulate wealth. So that's the business that I became into, building wealth and building pots of wealth. And then as I progressed through my career, being able to use all of the tax loopholes, I very quickly realized that there is pretty much no way that you can escape income tax. So the poor and the middle class are constantly being taxed. But if you have money, then you can use all of the legislation that is around to not pay tax, or limit the amount of tax that you pay. And I got involved with sophisticated tax planning that involved complex offshore structures and tax planning. And I realized that some of my clients that were very, very wealthy were paying less tax than some of my clients that were middle class. So the wealthy don't pay the tax that they should pay. And somebody like Warren Buffett, one of the richest people on the planet, says, please tax me more. So a lot of these people, I also realized, are okay. A lot of them are okay paying tax. It's the advisors that keep telling them, because the advisors earn a lot of money creating these sophisticated tax schemes. So a lot of this is actually driven by, again, the attachment to the self and the fear and the desire. So the advisors are the ones that are trying to feather their own nests with as much money as they can get. And I think we see this clearly, whether it's in a profit-making organization or whether it's a not-for-profit organization. You can have a charity with somebody who's who's leading that charity, earning huge amounts of money because they are identified to themselves, and they're driven by the fear and the desire, and generally because, again, they don't feel good enough, and all of these material things make them feel good enough. And I fell into that trap. So the more that I seemed to accumulate So I started my own business off the back of this, and one of them started to become really quite successful, turning over millions of pounds. And yeah, I could pretty much have anything or do anything I wanted to do. So by the time I got to around about 40 years of age, I was wondering why I was not feeling happy. And it took a sickness to help that. I was sick, and I couldn't do anything for a couple of weeks apart from be in bed. And everything started to come up for me. All of the childhood stuff, all of the things that I'd been running from pretty much most of my life, started to come up. My relationship with my mum, my relationship with my grandmother, my relationship with the lost relationship with my brother, my half brother, my sister, my relationship with my dad, and this feeling of loneliness, separation, anxiety that came from that, the fear that came from that, the wanting this love. And I started looking at my life and started realizing that I was leaving also a trail of destruction behind me. I was already divorced. I hadn't spent enough time with my children. So I started to not only run into the future, I started to look at regretting my past. But also I'd fallen into that trap of kind of like, my children saw me as kind of like a successful business guy that people came to for advice. So it became normalized with them as well. But when I started looking deeply into why I was feeling unhappy, I started to pick up books and read about what makes people happy. And all the books I was reading pretty much were saying the same thing, very similar things, that that the ancient wisdom was saying that the path to happiness is within. We all have it, and it's within us, deeply within us. And quantum physics and neuroscience and some incredible advances in our medical understanding of how the body works, the link to the feelings, the link to our mind and the perceptions, and how our mind works, and the consciousness within ourselves and the collective consciousness. It's all being rediscovered, remembered. Mindfulness can mean remembering, and through stillness and silence and having an amazing teacher can help you bring this deep, deep wisdom that is within us all. Because as quantum physics tells us that this body is not us. If we could collate all of the matter that's in this body that I have here, all the matter, it would be less than a grain of sand. We are made up mostly of empty space. which is not empty. It's only empty of a separate self. That I learned, I learned, and then realized that I could sit with this and realize the true nature of reality. So starting to look deeply into this and realizing that, wow, I'm not my thinking, and everything that I can measure is really not that important, because we're all going to die. It doesn't matter how many toys I have, how many houses I have, how many cars I have, how many girlfriends or partners I've had, all those experiences. The only thing that I leave behind are my actions. So this prompted me to start letting go, because accumulation of knowledge, of things, material things, and the things that are measured, were not making me happy. So I started to let go, and the more and more I let go, the happier I became. So in 2012, I pretty much started to let go of everything. And then in 2014, I attended a 21-day retreat in Plum Village, France, where my teacher, the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, was teaching a very, very deep teaching for 3 weeks on what happens when we're alive, on what happens when we die. And this was transformative for me. Even though I'd already started to let go of things, I realized that if the only things that I leave behind are my actions, then I had to already heal all of the actions that I'd already done that caused myself and others a lot of suffering. And then what actions do I want to take in this present moment and take into the future? So not long after that, after I'd let go of pretty much everything, and everyone around me was thinking that I was crazy, pretty much. All my business associates thought I was crazy. A lot of my family, I think, thought I was crazy. Beautifully, both of my children said to me, "Dad, whatever makes you happy, just go with whatever makes you happy." And that gave me a lot of strength, actually. So I decided to stay in the Plum Village Monastery in France for 2 years, to start looking even more deeply at the true nature of reality, and realizing that I am made of all non-me elements, non-Ian elements, that many causes and conditions have had to come together. So looking deeply into my ancestry, looking deeply into everything I've taken into my senses, looking deeply into my environments that I've been putting myself in, and realizing that this is what I've become. So I had to unpick that, and I had to apologize to a lot of people that I'd hurt, including myself. And the reason why I'd hurt a lot of people was because I didn't know how to love myself. I really didn't know how to love myself. So one of the powerful meditations called metta meditation, or loving kindness meditation, was instrumental in helping me start to love myself more and more and more. And the more I love myself with kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, the more I could start to understand myself and the difficulties that my mum and dad had had, and the habit energies that I developed, for example, through them, and this desire that really played out in sexual desire as well in my life as well, that I could very clearly see in my lineage as well, that I had to really try and start to take care of, because this sexual energy is probably one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful energy on this planet, that is quite destructive. And I know that is very, very controversial. And really learning this interplay between what is love, what is deep love, and how that the influences that I'd had come into my life, as a boy, as an adolescent, as a teenager, the messaging that I was get that we used to have girly magazines, and the boys would pass them round, and we'd get titivated by that, and that to objectify women was okay. And again, this separation that is in our society, and this is so much worse, as we know now. And this is again for another video, to look deeply into what is true love. And we can have true love with beautiful sexual union. And just to finish this part off, really, it's kind of like, why did I have to encounter a Zen master to teach me about sexual love? To realize that you can have sex without love, but you can't have sex without emotion. How did a Zen master have to tell me this? And then to start even looking deeply into that. We know this is a huge difficulty in our society. 2 of the top 10 websites visited on our planet are pornography websites. 20%. So this is a real difficulty, but a completely another subject. But it's such a strong driver. I just wanted to mention that as well in this video. That again, this separation, this objectifying, helps to destroy us as humans. But this, and again, I mean, it's very simple when we look at the model. If people are making money from this industry, then they're going to push the boundaries. What's going to get them the most views, and pushing those boundaries all the time, are making people wealthy. And many leaders or successful entrepreneurs and leaders are, when we look deeply, have a lot of patterning of this kind of childhood trauma, that they've had a difficult childhood. So if we can lead, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, with compassion, compassion for ourselves. So I started to look deeply into my relationship with my mother, and as a teenager, my mother used to bring up a lot of anger. My father used to bring up a lot of anger to me. But Thich Nhat Hanh helped me to understand, to hold that anger with compassion and mindfulness and love, and then to be able to see why my mother and father, for example, reacted in these ways, to get into the position that I was left to be brought up by my grandparents. And then to have compassion for that, and then to talk to them about it, and to understand even more why this happened and their regrets, has helped me tremendously heal these relationships. So we're turning 180 here. We're turning anger, such a strong, powerful energy, into compassion, another strong, powerful energy, by not separating, by bringing together and holding with love and kindness and compassion. So this was the healing journey that I started, and I know that I'm so lucky to have been able to spend 2 years in Plum Village Monastery, meditating on this and living in a community of that connectedness, that love, that understanding, that sharing, having a very clear path of knowing that we have this suffering within ourselves, knowing that there is a clear path to that suffering, and I've shared a little bit about that, but also knowing that the well-being is possible, and there is a very clear path to well-being by taking care of our body, our feelings, our perceptions, our mind, our consciousness, our collective consciousness. Then when we start to love ourselves, we can ripple this out into the world. We can be more loving and kind and compassionate to our family, our friends, our community, our society, Mother Earth. When we realize that we are all of the elements of Mother Earth, how can there be a dualism, a separation of Mother Earth is just an inanimate object that we can exploit? When we look deeply, we can realize that this is not the case, and that by taking the resources from Mother Earth as we are, because of this real attachment to ourselves, and the not feeling good enough, not being loved, we're not going to find this happiness. As Thich Nhat Hanh says, we're not going to find happiness in the supermarket, in the department stores, in consuming. We're not going to find the happiness in food or alcohol or drugs. These are just temporary things to help numb the pain, which is another thing that I became dependent on. I became dependent on alcohol, and I am on the 12-step process program, which is so similar to the path of deep wisdom that Thich Nhat Hanh shares. And we know that all of the ancient wisdoms and indigenous species know that if we can realize this interconnected nature, maybe we can survive as a species. And again, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, maybe that the 21st century, the only way we're going to survive as a species is that the 21st century becomes the century of spirituality, of knowing this deep interconnectedness, as Thich Nhat Hanh coined the word interbeing, realizing our interbeing nature, and that I can look deeply into my grandparents, my mum and dad, myself, my own actions, my children, and now my grandchildren. And maybe we are the only ones in our whole lineage that are actually looking to stop, calm, look deeply. And Thich Nhat Hanh shares with us that we can do this so simply by coming back to our breath. And if we can continually keep coming to our breath and calming, and we know there's so many studies been done on mindfulness, helping us to heal in many, many different ways. But the breath is an incredible portal to help calm down just our whole nervous system, and really touch into being able to reduce our heart rate. Our breathing becomes more deeper, becomes slower naturally, which helps with our whole parasympathetic nervous system, our kind of rest and digest. These elements of fight, flight, freeze, fawn, looking deeply into these, and then understanding what is driving us at any particular moment, and how we react to that. So mindful breathing can just help us. Our meditation practice and our mindfulness practice can just really help us to have the insights to then respond to situations instead of naturally reacting in a habitual way. So if someone that we love says something to us that hurts us, we don't react so quickly with something that will hurt them. We breathe, and maybe we can respond in a different way. Even just saying, where has that come from? That response come from? Just to, and in neuroscience, they tell us this mindful gap. We're creating this mindful gap so that we can respond in a different way than we habitually react to. And this beautiful path that we're on, that we can be on, is so concrete. This mindfulness practice, the mindfulness helps to lead to better concentration. So mindfulness, the opposite to mindfulness is restlessness. And how much restlessness do we see in ourselves and in our friends, our loved ones? A lot of restlessness, continually doing and having all of the time. So if we can cultivate our mindfulness practice, we can cultivate then concentration. And then when we can cultivate our concentration, the opposite to concentration is dispersion. How our mind is dispersed all of the time. And I don't have it here, but we use this example of a calm jar filled with glitter, and if we put this calm jar down, the glitter settles at the bottom, and this is the same with our mind. We can settle, and when our mind settles, we can have the clarity. And then the insights will rise from within us. No one will have to tell us anything. We have the deep wisdom within us, and it will allow this to come up. So a lot of people say that mindfulness and meditation is a waste of time because they could be doing something useful. But I can say that I've made many, many mistakes in my life that have cost me a lot of time. And I look at Thich Nhat Hanh, who is an incredible Zen master, and through mindfulness meditation has written over 100 books, has saved thousands and thousands of lives during the Vietnam War, and through this mindfulness practice, and touched millions of people's hearts, and influenced many, many, many people to follow this path of peace and reconciliation and compassion and kindness, that if we all have within us. So maybe we can see that this is not going to come, this huge change that we need in our civilization is not going to come from the top to the bottom, it's going to come from the bottom up. So the more and more of us who awaken, and the more and more of us that take care of our own childhood stuff, our childhood difficulties, the healing, then, just little me, just little old me, how I've transformed my life from being, from investing, literally like hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds, euros, dollars, maybe more than that, that was doing a lot of destruction in the planet because of my ignorance and my not knowing of the impacts of my actions. So with this path of mindfulness, the mindfulness, like say, will lead to the concentration will lead to the insights coming up, and then this will help calm our mind and help us to start more wholesome thinking. And I'm only sharing my experience to this, but I've seen it with many, many people, hundreds, thousands of people that came through Plum Village in that 2 years that I was there. And this huge transformation that can happen. And then when we help with our thinking not to be so dualistic, to realize that everything is connected, we can love more. And then this is going to show in our speech, this beautiful eightfold path that is in Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings. And when we speak, we can see what's going on in our own minds, in what's going on in somebody else's mind, by how we communicate, how we speak. How do we speak to ourselves? And how do we speak to others? So we can already gauge what's going on with somebody in how they are speaking, and then how that shows up in their bodily actions. And Thich Nhat Hanh already tells us that thinking is already an action. So what actions do we want to leave in the world? So if we take care of our thinking, then we take care of everything. So this shows up in our bodily actions, and then our bodily actions, when we start going on this beautiful positive feedback loop of mindfulness, concentration, insights, more wholesome thinking, more wholesome speaking and communication, how we act in our world. If we go out and we've got this essence with us, when we're walking down the street, we're connecting with people with a smile, with a connection. We want to interact with people in a more beautiful, loving, wholesome way. And then when we can do this, because we're on this, starting this beautiful positive feedback loop, then it starts to come into our livelihood of everything we want. Because we're loving this practice so much, we want to do it in everything we do. So for me, that was completely changing career from being, in the world of money and finance and advising and building huge amounts of wealth with myself and others, to letting go of all of that, and then moving, particularly over the last 10 years, to a path of spirituality and sharing this deep wisdom with the world. It's like going back to academia, to university, to college for the last 12 years, and reskilling, because that's what I've had to do, and resensitizing myself so that I can be the human being that I want to be on the planet, not the masks, not the faces that I put on. And, you know, and in a lot of ways lived many years in debauchery, and I've had to take care of that. I've had to reconcile with that. I've had to do the karmic retribution. I've had to sit in 10 days of what they call Vipassana, 10 days of silent retreat, of which 5 or 6 days can be torture, because you're having to deal with all of the stuff that I'm not proud of in my life. Some of the things that I've done in my life are really I've had to heal. And we have to do this at some point in our life. We have to do this in some point of our life, because we have to do it on our deathbed. So we might as well do it now and then have more joy and happiness for the rest of our life. But then when it impacts on what you want to do, you know, if we're working for 8 hours a day, do we want to do something that is really wholesome for us? And I'm lucky enough now to, you know, pretty much everything in my life now is to do with this path of practice. So the offering to the world. Now I've let go. I've probably let go of, if you can, let go of too much. So my aspiration, one of my aspirations was to keep letting go of money. How much I used to say to clients, or one of our marketing strap lines in one of my business was, how much money was enough? Because we saw people building huge amounts of wealth, but actually not living life. And we used to think, maybe, we do sophisticated cash flow forecasting to say, if we cash flowed until you were 99 years of age, how much money would you need now? And most people had enough now and they could stop working. But it was incredible how many people didn't, how many business owners didn't. We proved to them that they didn't need all of this wealth, and they could actually start giving it away or enjoying it, and they still wanted to accumulate in some respects. Now my question to myself is like, how much is enough by the absolute minimum? And I've decreased this, this is crazy. I talk to myself, this is crazy. I've decreased my asset column to now below £200,000. Now that is a lot of money to a lot of people. But when you're 58 years of age, that is probably not enough to live on, particularly if I got a sickness, an illness. I needed treatment. But this is where we have to let go of the fear. This is where we really have to let go of the fear. And if we can let go of the fear, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, this is the biggest gift we can give to our family, our friends, the world. Because then we can't be ruled if we're not ruled by fear. And we can see this in our whole history as a human species. Wars break out because of fear. People follow one side or another side because of fear. And what Thich Nhat Hanh did in the Vietnam War, he was right in the center, in the middle way, talking of peace when neither side wanted to talk of peace. So as Thich Nhat Hanh said, he was the enemy of both sides. But you have to have incredible courage, incredible non-fear and compassion to be in that situation. And that's why that's why Thich Nhat Hanh is my teacher. And one of the greatest Zen masters that has ever lived. And then when we have this livelihood, then it gives us more diligence, more faith to carry on with this path. And then it just goes on in a positive feedback loop. More mindfulness, concentration, insight. So I hope that's been useful for you. We'll touch into some more of those points And yeah, please go well, and take care. Okay, thank you, dear friends, for listening to me. I hope this helps somebody. And yeah, sending love and kindness and compassion to you at this time.